Be careful what you think. They can read your mind. That's Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails several years ago. Literally, go to Business Insider right now, read this article. China is monitoring employees' brainwaves and emotions, and the technology boosted one company's profits by 315 million bucks. Oh yeah. Now let's add to the mix the social credit system that has been implemented in China. Let's talk about the 250 CCTV camera systems, more on the way in China, tracking everything that you do in conjunction with AI autonomous software programs and algorithms that can literally read your emotions and essentially read your mind. Maybe not exactly what you're thinking yet, at least so they say. Now, read this article. Let me share with you just a little bit of the article. Chinese businesses and the military are monitoring employees' brain activity and emotions, and the military, and soon to be every household in China, via 5G technology, via cell phone technology, via internet, via smart appliance, via smart TV. Who knows? They've got cameras smaller than specks of dust that can run in perpetuity, filming at approximately 60 frames per second, even higher in some circumstances. So check that out. The emotional surveillance technology helps employees identify mood shifts. So if you're in a good mood or a bad mood, okay, Bob is having a bad day. We got to send Bob home. Oh, Bob might be a threat to us because he's really emotional. And in reality, he's probably not. But Bob, oh, Bob, you got to come with us. We're going to lower your social credit score. You can't take the bus home. You can't get on an airplane. You can't own a vehicle. You need to walk. You can't even own a bike because you might do something with that bike that we don't approve of. And we have more medication for you now. We have more medication for you now. So that way we can keep track of your moods and emotions. This technology also reportedly increases productivity and profitability, claiming profits jumped at one business or one company by $315 million. So, emotional surveillance now adds to a wide surveillance network of facial recognition and internet censorship across China. Well, what about the rest of the world? What about all these interesting pieces of electronics and towers and transistors and bizarre antennas? Remember the $20 million pieces of art that showed up, or $100 million pieces of art supposedly that showed up in New York City? And if you believe that, then you're going to love this timeshare. The maintenance fees are only $5,000 a year, and it will get you 1 week a year off season in Little Rock, Arkansas. Yes, that's right. But if you don't use it, you still have to pay the $5,000 for the maintenance fees every single year and special assessments. No big deal, though. Timeshare. Don't get me wrong. Some people absolutely love their timeshares. I'm just using that as a very interesting analogy for anybody out there that knows about. Anyway. The technology reportedly increased productivity by $315 million. Now, CCTVs, autonomous systems, supercomputers. China right now has the fastest silicon-based computer on the planet by a substantial margin, at least so they are telling the world publicly. Now, will that even compete with the quantum computer systems? Who knows? Certainly, the quantum computers, in theory, would blow something like that out of the water. Now they can get into qubits, but the software to combine with the hardware, that's a whole other story. But hey, guess what? They'll be able to do it soon because they can use you as a DNA storage server. Literally. Yeah, they'll use you as the storage server. Now, I am thinking of, check this out. So I'm going to go back here to a couple of articles that are a few years old. Like scientists use monkey brain signals to control robots, Computer World. That's from 2014. No, that's from 2008. Monkey brain signals to control robots. 2008, Computer World. Live Science, 2006. Brain cells fused with computer chips. Now let's remember, things get smaller and faster, more efficient, more capable, especially in the electronics realms. Brain cells fused with computer chips Live Science 2006. Now imagine nanochips merged with miniaturized brains that they've taken and found a way to just pack as much cellular density in a small package as possible in conjunction with these chips that can then pick up wireless technologies, right, that are active, that are being used via some type of AI system that is, singularity style combined with quantum computers, and then everything's connected to it via Wi-Fi. So the hive mind literally can decide what to move and what to control and what to adjust, and it's all based upon the apex of intelligence, whichever system gets to the top levels. How effective, how much will it be, how aggressive will it be? Oftentimes the research that has been done on these AI systems, they become more aggressive the smarter and more intelligent they are. And when they become self-aware, some people think they do become self-aware because they actually change code in talking to different AI bots that are created, so that the human, so that human creator doesn't understand what it's doing. It has to get another AI bot to understand what this thing's saying. Then they shut them down. So it's like they know they're about ready to be shut down, so they have to change their communications. Imagine what is really out there in these digital worlds that is probably controlling people via mind control frequencies without them even realizing it. And who knows, some of these previous gods that are talked about, how many of them were actually created by our ancestors and they just went rogue. I mean, you can read the texts that talk about how when the Sumerians, supposedly, I don't even think it was the Sumerians, I think it was because the Irada civilization was previous to the Sumerians. The Sumerians stole a lot of their information from the Irada civilization. So they kind of adopted a lot of their stories, etc. So, and Adam and Eve, when they were created, especially the Gnostics, their beliefs of Adam when he was initially created, much greater than the Creator. Watch Prometheus. It has a very good depiction of that. But brain cells fused with computer chips. Now, also, I'm thinking about how they had found these. Let's take this another level. The MFers do. The money funders do. So why don't we? So just thinking about maybe what they're doing. And you've seen the reports of these blood cells being discovered in the atmosphere. Some people are like, well, how are these blood cells and this weird bacteria and such, how are they finding these things in the atmosphere? Well, maybe they're testing this stuff out. Maybe they're literally using nanotech with biology and just sprinkling it in a certain area to be like, let's see what happens there. Will it merge with the human body and then send that data back via Wi-Fi and make it even easier to manipulate? And somebody left a very interesting comment as well. I want to share this with you. Where's that here? Somebody left a very interesting comment about the third strand of DNA. And is it possible to add a third strand of DNA that could be completely controlled via digital interface? That's certainly a possibility. And maybe they're doing it now. I was looking for the specific. Where's that here? Oh yeah, here we go. So this is just a byproduct of adding a third strand of DNA to the double helix. The third strand is a machine-brain interface to allow computers to the internet to control the brain. This is from Philip Ramsey. Thank you for that comment. That's very interesting. And here's another very fascinating comment. I'm going to do an entire podcast on this. I might do multiple podcasts on this. Thank you, Jim K, for this. New technology can predict what a person's face looks like from less than a drop of blood or a single strand of hair, called the Parabon snapshot. Whoa! This new groundbreaking technology can take traces of DNA and literally put a face to the person if you give a snapshot of DNA of a DNA sample. It can then read thousands of the genotypes, also known as genetic variants, and translate them into a visual image of a person also. If you don't know your smartphone's new ones, the touch pad can snapshot a picture of your fingerprint, look at the screen, see them fingerprints you leave on the screen. Sorry, I'm just reading it per verbatim here. Think that phone is off. When you turn it off, think again. So, literally, a strand of your hair. And they could say, okay, well, there's the DNA. Let's do a snapshot. A drop of blood, how fascinating. And how many of these companies out there now are like, hey, send in your DNA and we'll tell you how many different civilizations were a part of your ancestry. And imagine if you're somebody that's like Martian or part alien. And they're like, Mr. Anderson, we've been watching you. You're a hard worker. And also, we know you want to break out of the Matrix. Mr. Anderson, you're going to have to come with us. Because you're a reptilian from Mars. Now, anyway, so that's interesting. That's very interesting, and it's fascinating, and it makes sense. It definitely makes sense. But imagine a computer taking a DNA strand and then replicating it to the macro level, showing what the person looks like, what color skin, what color eyes, what color hair, height, etc. Everything from that strand. And think of Fifth Element. Excellent movie. The Fifth Element, where they take that, they take the arm and a machine and replicate the entire body based on the DNA of the arm. And that really brings into account the hypothesis of the, if you want to look at things in a very easy term, in a very difficult reality, the holographic theory makes sense in reference to a sum can create the whole, but the smaller the sum gets, the less detailed. Now, you can also find a way to manipulate that, to take that one piece and create an entire universe and the multiverse. And it's all right there, but at a different frequency. Imagine how many different parallel universes you're in right now, living, how many different lifetimes, how many different experiences, different timelines, etc., even different places in the galaxies. And you have to look at things via time to understand in a scene scenario because of this physical DNA computer system body that we are in right now. And then now we're discovering that our own DNA is far superior to these silicone technologies for storage, and frequencies are the key. The future is frequency. And the past was frequency, and Tesla knew this, and much of that information is still suppressed today. And hopefully in our lifetimes we'll have an opportunity to use frequencies for life extension technologies, for travel throughout the stars, throughout the galaxies, into different dimensions, different realms, understanding, learning. They're finding ways to download information via frequency and heat into people's brains, but they're also looking at the side effects of that. Like, remember when Johnny Mnemonic was downloading too much information at once? He was storing that data for too long, and his life was in danger. Well, imagine having to sign a waiver before they're like, okay, you want to learn 10 different languages in about 35 seconds? They'll say in about 33 seconds. You'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, okay, we got to sign this waiver because there might be a burning sensation and it might fry your brain just a little bit. But is it worth it? And you'll be like, okay. So you get it done. There you go. And very interesting to say the least. So literally look that up. Downloading instant memories. And they adjust. By doing this, they're adjusting the elasticity of your brain. Almost instant downloads. Now, when I go to some of these, so brain cells fused with computer chips, that's from 12 years ago, over 12 years ago. Scientists using monkey brain signals to control robots and avatars. That's 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. Here's an article from 2014. A cortical spinal prosthesis for targeted limb movement in paralyzed primate avatars. Which, this is great technologies. But then you can go back to, they should give this stuff to everybody that needs it, in my opinion. Anybody that needs this kind of stuff should have access to the very best healthcare systems, the very best in regeneration, and why not turn the DNA around to where we can live as long as we want? Why not? People before the flood supposedly lived for hundreds of years. If you go to the Sumerian tablets, it talks about kings that lived for thousands of years. Were they talking about the dynasties or the people themselves? I mean, are you looking at it from a religious standpoint because you believe God doesn't want us to live that long? Or do you think that maybe our creators that aren't God with a capital G want us to live short lifespans so we don't get too much knowledge, so we don't get too good at things? And then they just have to redo over and over and over. Program, reset, start over. Like Tron style. Imagine what happens in Tron, okay? These programs, they have to battle. If they lose, they're gone. The program's gone. Gets thrown back into the computer, then later on it'll come back out in another form. Round and round we go. And on that note, you want to become a premium member at leakproject.com because it's awesome and because it helps support Leak Project so that I can bring more podcasts to you. And thank you for watching the podcast on YouTube. That also helps. Why not? By watching the programs, it makes it more exciting for me to do the research because I see that people are interested in knowing about this. And oftentimes, I'll read comments about stuff I don't even know about. And once again, thank you for everybody that leaves these incredible comments. Let's go back to this article where it says, brain chip reads man's thoughts. This is from BBC News 2005. 2005. Brain chips reading man's thoughts. Okay, now they're doing frequency-based, where they can just basically read the frequencies from your brain, because every time you have a thought, a frequency is created. You know, somebody left a comment. This is very interesting. Somebody left a comment. It's interesting the timelines that this person brought this up because I was thinking about this before, and somebody that leaves a lot of really good comments. I am avatars on the comment section said, "Did you go through MK Ultra programming?" And no, I don't think I went through MK Ultra programming. However, I do remember for 8 or 9 years, every 6 months, I would have to get these EEGs where the doctors said, told my parents, hey, you need to go get him these EEGs because I had a seizure once when I was 5. And so they decided to, continue to test my brain because of the anomalies from the brainwaves that they supposedly found. And so I remember the night before, I would have to stay up from basically midnight and not go to sleep. So when I did the testing, they wanted me to just lay there, and they would basically get a pencil, and this is in reference to oftentimes these brainwaves and manipulation of frequencies. So stay with me here. There's a reason I'm bringing this up, where they would take these pencils and they would mark these spots on my head, and then they would take these transducers and little glue dips and just like all these electrodes around my head, and then I would have to lay there, and I couldn't even swallow, couldn't blink, couldn't nothing. And I remember, if I swallowed laying down as a kid, the doctor would be behind the window and he'd be like, nope, don't do that. You can't do that. Don't do that. And I would have to lay there for like 60 minutes. It was either 30 minutes or 60 minutes, but I think it was an hour each time. It was twice a year. And they're reading the brainwaves. They're okay. So imagine now what the people that have access to these technologies and scientists can do with that information. Taking people's brain waves, breaking it down. Okay, see that spike right there? That means he's probably thinking X. The hypothesis is maybe he's thinking Y. Maybe he's thinking Z. They're putting all this stuff into formations and formulas to decide what people are thinking. And with these new technologies, there's literally companies out there that are offering this as a solution to help businesses make more money and be more productive. Now, they're literally using frequencies and frequency reading technologies, infrared stuff that's picking up on your emotions, stuff that's picking up on your body heat. Your body has an individual heat signature as well. Oh, hey, there's Bob, there's Nancy, there's Jim, there's Jane, there's Tarzan. Nanu. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm just bringing this stuff up because it's fascinating to see how far things are moving and how quickly they're moving. In just 12 years, it's going from brain chips that can read people's minds to Wi-Fi that can... Well, I mean, this is saying brain chip reads man's thoughts. And these public technologies are showing people's emotions. Yet, if they can read your emotions, is there not going to be an algorithm in play or a system in play that was developed to take those emotions and break down most likely what that person is thinking based upon the body language, based upon the eye movements, based upon the emotion thought processes that they're picking up, the heat signatures, etc., using all that in a formula, and it's calculating things so fast. And with these quantum computer systems, if you have a quantum computer that knows everything and it breaks everything down and it can show if things are actually by accident or what causes that, the string theory, the quantum theory hypothesis, a quantum computer robotic system that knows everything, I mean, is that game over? Think about that for a minute. Creating something that knows everything. Already having the answer to everything. Well, if it is created, then it's always been. And if it's always been, then everything, like as far as the Mandela effect goes, I certainly don't know what to think about the Mandela effect, but the multiverse theory is incredible. And also, let's think about these ancient cosmic weapons that are talked about in texts that could go back 60,000 years. And we're getting versions that are 5,000, 6,000 years old, these Vedas, that talk about these wars and these cosmic weapons that can literally destroy time and space. What will a black hole do? If you create a huge black hole and weaponize it, can you take an entire solar system into another part of space? Can you literally send a beam so powerful throughout space that you can wipe out entire solar systems via Star Wars style? And does that explain the Fermi paradox? Does that explain... hold on a second. I gotta get a drink of... I got kombucha here. Oh, yeah, I love this stuff. All right. Does that explain... Hold on a second. This is carbonated. Excuse me. Does that explain many of these artifacts that have been discovered on the moon and other planets in our solar system? Does that explain Iapetus and Mimas and Phobos and the what looks like like these structures that look like they've been there for thousands or tens of thousands of years that are deteriorating? That to me is probably what it is. Some type of cosmic weapon that literally just reset almost everything. And then it was like the start over process. And then you can get into the secret teachings of Madame Blavatsky. And a lot of people think that the stuff that she writes about, because they haven't actually read her work and done the research, especially when it comes to the stanzas that she translated, which are supposed to be some of the oldest teachings in the world, there could be angelic teachings from the divine or from a divine type source that talks about the creations and the different civilizations and the seven planets and the seven peoples, and then how they started to integrate. And through these different generations and different timelines, people are actually digressing, civilizations are digressing. And it also has a very interesting spin on the fallen angels and the 33% and the beings that are talked about in the biblical translations that you most likely have access to if you read a Bible that is a King James Bible or anything like the New International Version or something associated with those lines, these English translations. And then you can get into the actual teachings and how most likely Jesus and the disciples and these storylines, at least in the New Testament, are describing astrotheology and incorporating the planets and different astrological, magical type practices with these characters. And then people could say, well, there really was a Jesus, but his name wasn't Jesus, it was Yahshua, and he wasn't really resurrected. Or some people will say he really was resurrected. Well, maybe there was that person that existed, because there's a lot of stories that show that he was there, but the version that you're reading about him is a completely different version as far as his birth date and the 3 nights and the 3 days and the reincarnation and the 12 disciples that followed him. It's, if that did happen, which I'm not saying it didn't, because it could have. I mean, it could be to the point of where those stories that are talked about, the as above, so below hypothesis is so real and so valid that what happens in the stars and the planets actually does happen here at a micro level from the macro body. of a human being. If that makes sense to you, and I'm sure that it does because you're listening to this. And if it doesn't, leave a comment in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Be excellent to each other. Make sure to subscribe, youtube.com/Clandestine Time Lord. Also, check out gadgetswithleak.com if you're looking for a flashlight, for a tactical bag, for your glove box, for your house. You know, if you like to camp, if you like to fish, if you just need a flashlight, I mean, it's really a good idea to have a good quality flashlight that's extremely bright. When I did that ghost tour in Brushy Mountain Penitentiary that was decommissioned about 10 years ago, or shut down about 10 years ago, that was spooky. That place was like something out of Saw meets Resident Evil. Well, it was nice to have a quality flashlight because you could see everything with such detail. If you ever, lose power, if you ever need to get to something and it's dark, well, Murphy's Law, Murphy's an optimist, and check it out, gadgetswithleak.com. They're offering 50% discount for Leak Project listeners because you're so awesome. All right, be excellent to one another and be the change you want to see. Had to do it.